So,
Just give me a
yeah,
second.
yeah,
I want.
okay. So we talk about the communication part where we discuss like how project team communicates with each other and the stakeholders. Uh, One of the key thing in agile projects is the human interactions or the people interactions over processes and tools, because it is the people who do the work, and we need to have a little bit kind of flexibility on how we communicate and exchange information about the project. So let's see some of the guidance. Communication plays very important role in every project. I mean, it is said that project managers significant time, almost about 70 to 80% time goes in communication and coordination. Now, a lot of project failures or kind of problem arise when the communication is not working well and is not effective. We need stakeholders to be kept in loop. We need team members to kept in loop. Generally, people think communication means sending information about project status, but that's not just communication about the project. It is also about communicating your problem, communicating your requirements, business need, checking whether the solution is going to meet your business needs, checking if you are in the right track, telling what we have done, what we are to do next. We're talking about the money that has been spent on the project, whether the project is on schedule. So there is a lot of, I mean, most of the time you will see that you are doing some kind of communication. And just imagine if you do this communication over emails and chats or documents, then it becomes really difficult. Generally problem comes when people tend to explain their ideas on documents, so what they think and what they write. Apart from that, the other person reads them, so what does he interpret and understands and then does. That basically is first point where the problem starts, and then we have issues where requirements are not properly understood, there is an ambiguity, or you didn't do what we want. Some techniques to overcome such common issues in communication are offered by the book, and these are like facilitated workshops. That's where we kind of engage stakeholders. Then we have modeling, which is about prototyping solutions, and iterative development, which is an agile way of evolving the product. You will see three chapters, each talking about these and how to do facilitated workshops or iterative development. We want communication to work well for us, and most project management methods and frameworks, they have great deal of emphasis in communication. To do communication, apart from some techniques, you need a lot of skills in interpersonal, like interpersonal skills. You need a lot of negotiation skills, you need a lot of presentation skills, you need also some kind of facilitation and reporting skills. Let's talk about the facilitated workshops. That's the guidance available in the Attorn book. It's one of the five key practices, and the reason why facilitated workshop has been recommended is, instead of talking to stakeholders in kind of, in separate sessions, or trying to understand requirements and communicating using emails, it is better that we get the key stakeholders together in a meeting. We set up an agenda for the meeting, some objectives, what we want to achieve from the meeting, set up some timelines, get few people to participate, get a workshop facilitator who basically plans the meeting. For example, facilitator workshop works with the team leader to understand the objectives of why are we doing this meeting, and then who is good person to attend the meeting, and then set up a meeting, send agenda to all audience, and then they all come together in the meeting. Now you can call such meetings for feasibility reviews. For example, when you are done with the feasibility assessment and you want to decide whether to go to the next phase or not, you can bring business and solutions and management stakeholders together to see what we have achieved during feasibility and what is the general kind of feedback. When we go into foundations and we do planning, Even for doing planning, we can engage some stakeholders who can contribute in planning. When we are doing requirements gathering, we can get business stakeholders to join in along with the solutions team, and then everyone basically participates in the requirement. You can use different ways of getting people to get to kind of contribute, like you can do brainstorming, you can do idea mapping, mind mapping, voting. Apart from that, anonymous ways of contributing to requirements, like people participating without disclosing their name and contributing to the requirements, and ranking and prioritization of requirements. How facilitated workshop work helps, because we have all the stakeholders together and they all discuss it out together. We understand the point of view of various stakeholders. Like, we bring technical people and we bring business people. Business people tells we need payments solution. Technical people then can ask questions on that requirement, and the business people can explain what is their actual requirements for payments, and these people can kind of propose some kind of solutions, and then we discuss it. It is better we discuss it in facilitated workshops and understand everybody's point of view. Somebody can keep basically noting down the notes or the follow-up actions, and the facilitated workshop the facilitator can then basically follow up and see the actions are completed. It helps in doing buying, it helps in doing ownership and achieving consensus on requirements, targets, cost, approvals. You can have facilitated workshops at the start of time box, or at the start of a release, or at the end of a release, for example, to review how we delivered. And then everyone contributing what we learned, what went well, what went wrong, and what needs to be done next, what are the leftovers, accepting them, suggesting. All of this can happen when people come together. If you remember, one of the principles of ATO is collaborate and continuously communicate. Now that is one of the interface to collaborate by bringing everybody together on the same platform, and it also helps enrich communication. Apart from facilitated workshops, you have another technique called as modeling. Now, modeling is quite popular in every industry. I mean, whether you are talking about aviation industries, or you are talking about construction engineering, or you talk about software engineering, people basically cannot visualize how the product will look like. I mean, it is said about the product that it is good to see a early preview that I can smell, touch, test, or kind of feel. That tells me whether is this something that I really want. So if I am going to kind of if I want to buy a, let's say, a residential apartment, and I see some plans there, then I can't visualize how it is, how the finished product will look like. So generally they show me the prototype, like I explained to you. I went to this one of the builders and he had shown me how the buildings are arranged, where is the entry point, where the parking is there, where is the children's play area, how, where is the elevator, and which flat are we talking about. And then they have another sample flat which shows me how the flat will look like when you rearrange some basic furniture. That way it helps me to kind of visualize how the finished good will look like, instead of looking at some documents and plan layouts, because we don't come from that industry. Similarly, when somebody asks me, can you implement an SAP system to in my company, and if I tell how I'm going to help them and what workflows we are going to build, it's very difficult for them who are using currently Excel sheet and Word documents to visualize how that is going to work. It really helps them to show, for example, uh, a workflow may not be a real time working, but something that just mocks up, like the screens, buttons, some kind of a journey that user undertakes, and then some kind of results. Maybe it's not being processed, maybe they are just kind of say wireframes or something, but that helps the user to understand the application. You can see that a lot of mobile companies, they make some handheld like devices, their phones or something, they show up some interfaces and they build around that. When we did that handheld kind of a device and application for the insurance company in UK, We talked about how these screens will look like when data is populated, how you do processing, what kind of reports will look like, what these reports will show. They were not real time, but they were mocked up for the users. Apart from that, the handheld device was also kind of shown in the form of a prototype. So when it was given to the users, it actually had shown them, well, okay, this is the handheld device. It will be, it can come in two colors. These are the buttons. This is how you function. This is how you connect to the internet. This is where you insert the card. That way, the user can tell them like, well, this button is not very user friendly. Could you please add this button as well? Could you please put some instructions as well? So they can actually contribute after seeing something. Modeling plays very important role in understanding the requirement. Generally, you should try to use prototypes that can be reused rather than throwing away the prototypes. So if you make prototypes, then you have to go and check, kind of, use them in actual coding by doing improvements. Now, when you do modeling in the beginning, when you are doing the designs or in the exploration phase of your project, when you have the user stories, you mock up the screens, you can show functionality like how the product search will look like, how the product catalog will look like, how the user will log in, and then start building actual development or code using the approved prototypes. Uh, it enables the principles for delivering on time. How? By basically ensuring that there is less rework as we get constant feedback, continuous communication, again by going back to the user, showing the prototype, taking corrective actions, making changes, going then, following up, and refining the product in each iteration. We actually keep communicating, so there is very less chance of throwing a surprise. And collaborating the business and the technical team, they collaborate to come out with a good prototype, which is then later translated into a working product. That way buying is increased. So facilitated workshops helps collaborate by bringing people together in a forum, and then they focus on a topic and they discuss it out and they agree requirements. Modeling further creates a design or a prototype or a wireframe, which is again shown to people maybe in a facilitated workshop where people can contribute what they like, didn't like, and what kind of improvements are required. So you have another iteration, and then finally you agree the prototype. Then you get into engineering phase where you start developing and testing and reviewing and again going back to the users at the end of each iteration. This is also a form of communication. And then there are daily stand-ups. Now daily stand-ups are done by the solution development team. So we have this high level team which is project level, made up of business sponsor, visionary, project manager, and technical coordinator. They look at the big picture. So they look at the releases. So if you have three releases, they look at what's coming in each release, how many time boxes make up one release, and then they look at the overall requirements of functionality to be delivered in each release and the cost. We divide the release into time boxes and we drag and drop requirements to each time box. When the team starts on the first day, they make a time box plan and they see how much work they can actually undertake based on the current availability of people and the requirements complexity and the design complexity. Once they start the time box execution on each day, the team meets to see what has been done yesterday, what is being done today, and if there are any roadblocks that are stopping us from achieving our targets. Daily stand-ups happen generally at the same time at the same place, attended by solution development team. But others can also join in. Like you can have the project manager attending, you can have the agile coach to oversee whether daily stand-ups are happening every day and what people discuss. You can have visionary also attending. So people can attend, but the only people who can speak and participate are the solution development team members. How it helps them? Basically, they get a forum or a platform where they can kind of bring out the issues that they are facing. They should not talk about kind of how to solve the problem or the change request, or they should not talk about solutions. All they discuss is the the problems that is stopping, so that it is highlighted in the meeting. They also check with each other what they have completed and what are they doing next. So if there are any dependencies, it is basically brought out. Once the meeting is over, people can have a after party. For example, they can have discussions around problems discussed and how it will have to be resolved. The team leader is responsible to make sure daily stand-ups happen on time every day. It's basically one of the key essential thing in Atan, yeah, that daily stand-ups must be done. Each day we track how we are performing. Now, few rules are there. The meeting should not take more than 15 minutes. So generally, if you have 7 to 8 people on the team, each one gets about a minute or a 2 minute to speak. If you have a lot of people on the meeting, then uh, you won't be able to finish the meeting in 15 minutes. So your rule should be 15 minutes, not more than 1 or 2 minutes to each participant. And they should not discuss about solution and improvements, but they should just say completed, not completed, started, not started, and what's stopping them from doing their work. Any issues that needs to be addressed by the project manager are noted down by team leader and are escalated to the project manager, who is actually responsible for facilitating and providing all kind of resource support to the teams. The solution development team that attends these meetings are the business ambassadors, the solution developers, testers, business analysts, team leader, uh, business advisors or technical advisors as required. Business ambassador helps in any kind of prioritization if required. So for example, we are having a daily standard towards the end of time box, and if it turns out that we can't finish all the work in that time box, business ambassadors input and advice is required to see the de-scoping. Just in case if we figure out in the daily stand up that a must have cannot be completed on time, then we can actually escalate that to the business visionary through the project manager.
Why is it called daily stand-up?
Okay, the next one which is proposed for kind of interaction and communication is the iterative development. Iterative development means you do short cycles of some activity, like you have this short periods in which you identify what needs to be done, you do it, and you again show back to the customer. It's like your plan, do, check, act. Plan what needs to be done, do it, check it, and then act. For example, if something needs to be changed or if you need to improve, then you act on that. It gives you good kind of opportunity to check whether you are doing as per to the requirements. It's one of the key techniques in Atal. It's also one of the key techniques in Scrum or any form of Agile. Yeah, wherever product development is done, people use iterative development, and not just part of Agile. Even before that, people were doing iterative development. How it helps the solution development team, they first identify what work they are going to do within a time box. So you have a time box, let's say 4 weeks. In the first week, you have one iteration. So every time box will have about 3 iteration. We'll talk about this later on. So in each iteration, they identify the tasks that needs to be done. They plan how and who will do it. They do it, and they get it reviewed by the business ambassador or the business stakeholders. Based on their feedback, they again identify what needs to be done next, how and who do it, and get a feedback. That is your end of iteration 2. And then your third iteration in the time box, where you again do the final round to get the product or feature completed and again get the feedback. So iterative development involves 4 steps. Identify the objectives and the acceptance criteria, and what do you mean by Done. Done means I am done with the work. They plan how the objectives will be met, the resources, tasks, and activities. Evolve, that is, do it. Whether it is design, development, testing, or it is documentation or feedbacks. And then you have review. That means when you are done, you check it with your customers, stakeholders, business ambassador, visionary, whosoever is supposed to check it. It helps collaboration because development team does it and the business team checks it whether it is being done properly. We'll talk about when we go into time box, we will check how iterations are carried out within each time box. But for now, let's just understand something like this. I have a project which will take 6 months to deliver all required functionality on the live environment. But since 6 months is a pretty long time, I divide the project into three increments. We can also call them releases. The first increment delivers some functionality that is required to go live. In the second iteration or the increment, we deliver some more functionality. And in the third increment, we deliver the remaining one and we are all done. Now let's take the first increment, which is of 2 months. To manage 2 months work, I again divide it into time boxes. How many weeks makes one time box? You decide based on the complexity, the requirement size, and the team bandwidth. Let me just say I have divided the 2 months time box into 2 months increment into 2 weeks time box. So 2 month increment means actually 2 into 4, 8 weeks. I divided 8 weeks into four time boxes of 2 weeks each. I need to plan each time box, deliver time box, see what's happening in the next time box, and inspect and adapt. I start with the first time box of 2 weeks. So I have 10 days. In the first time box of 10 days, we divide the time box into three iterations. In the first iteration, we usually do requirements analysis, maybe prototyping. In the second iteration, we do some development, some testing, and do the review. So we build further on the prototype. And then in the third iteration, we complete all code, some documentation around it, do code checking, unit testing, and whether it is integrated with other features, and show the demo at the end of the iteration to the business stakeholders. So you have each time box divided into iterations, and you have some kind of specifications available about how you run each of those time boxes. So we'll talk about that soon. By using time boxes and iterative development, we are able to collaborate because all teams work together. Like during identify time of iteration, people come together to decide targets, and review time, again people come together to see how many targets and how will we kind of met those targets and expectations. We again have iterative development, so we evolve from a prototype, and this makes sure or helps in meeting customer requirements. We keep communicating and we demonstrate control. So if iteration is not working well, time box may not work well. If time box doesn't work well, the increment may not work well. So you have enough time to respond to such kind of problems that are anticipated or are occurring. Some of the things on iterative development that you should do is the project manager did not direct the team or interfere within the team affairs. It is left to the team leader and the solution development team. We also use management by exception, which is the teams are supposed to complete all must haves and as many should or could have. But if due to some problems we are not able to finish all must haves, then with the help of business ambassador and with the help of priorities set for the time box, the teams can decide about dropping should have and could have to finish must haves within that time box. Because team meets on each day, it becomes quite kind of visible to see how every member is contributing and progressing. And if we see some differences or problems or roadblocks, we try to get in the project manager to help facilitate and address those problems. That's basically a little about the so we talk about the prioritization and time boxing techniques of Agile handbook. These two techniques help us support some of the principles in a turn, like focus on the business need. We also basically deliver on time. It also helps continuous communication and also helps uh, demonstrate control, and they never compromise quality and collaborate. So lots of principles are basically supported by these two techniques. These are the two techniques that also helps us become agile. Like as I said to you, prioritization is more about understanding the business requirements and needs and then ranking them in the order basically important to the customer. So because time cannot change, because date cannot change, we basically identify what scope can be.
You, your voice is falling.
Yeah, okay, 1 second. So, because we have this the constraints that the time cannot change, what we try to do is, just in case we are not able to deliver on time, we basically de-scope features that are not very important from business point of view, or that doesn't stop us from selling the products. So prioritization works very effectively to be on time, because time is more important than features. Now, when you do prioritization, it actually means understanding the business needs and their imminent needs. Apart from that, what is important from their perspective. Normally, what happens is when the de-scoping kind of activity is done, a lot of time business is not taken into confidence, and then the development team or the supplier delivers features that cannot help the business achieve their objectives. Like we have had an application where we were able to complete the user registration, the user administration, like changing password. We also basically completed, for example, the forgot your password, and we completed login functionality. We completed payments module and reports and many things. But we were not able to finish all the work in search engine. But without running a search, user is not going to even log in to buy a product. So even if you finish and deliver it to the customer, it did not make much sense to them, because they thought, well, I mean, unless a product is searched and identified, how is the user going to give us that kind of order? I mean, how useful is reset password? We could have done the reset password ourselves. Somebody just calls up and says, I have forgotten my password, and some of the admin guy here manually just goes, changes the password and sends. Why is that functionality needed? Why is the payment functionality needed when you can't even show the products? So you got to understand all this perspective, in which order we need to do this and what's very important at this time. Even within payments, there could be few things that are far more important than other things, like which payments to be used, uh, what kind of reports are generated, what information is shared, what is shown on the screen. We can have many things to be discussed as part of prioritization. So one of the technique for doing that is Moscow, which is part of the book. Moscow stands for the must have, should have, could have, and won't have, which tells what is the minimum usable subset, the guaranteed features when we arrive on the date that we promised. So my date doesn't change, and this is the minimum requirement that I'm going to deliver to you. Should have is the expected, wherein I want them, but I can live without them until the next release. Could have, I possibly want them. If you deliver, it will be really nice, because there are workarounds and we can leave it until next time. won't have are earmarked for the future deliveries. They are not part of releases, but you put them as part of your strategy or the product vision. So at some point in time, we might undertake a release to deliver this. So just in case, if you want to make a design or kind of arrangements, then you can think about them. Now, to do Moscow, we need to have the business people engaged throughout. What we do usually is, as part of the foundations phase, the business owners, that is the sponsor, makes a business case that tells what solution we are requiring. A solution could be the entire website that sells product online. So it tells what solution we are looking for to solve our imminent business problem. And then the visionary, along with other stakeholders and development team, identifies all the requirements that will form that solution. You might have lots of requirements. So what you do next is you find out, well, okay, can you tell us the perceived order, the ranking? So you do the ranking. And then what you do is you have this prioritized requirement list, which may have hundreds of your requirements, which are usually two liners or three liners. And for each requirement, you mark them must have, should have, could have, or whatever. Then what you do, you divide your project into releases. So you have release 1, release 2, release 3. You take the release one and you find out, as part of your first release, out of these 100 requirements which are required by the business. So you take your 30 or 40 odd requirements that can be delivered as part of first release. And for those 30 or 40 odd requirements, you again sit and understand their priorities. Because if I am not able to finish everything by the end of month 2, which ones will be required to ship the product or to sell the product or to go live? So you make their priorities. Then you start with time box. You pull the requirements from your the release kind of backlog, you can say, the release list, and then find out what we are doing in this particular time box. So you have these business requirements which are ranked in the order. You also identify the dependencies to deliver them, and then accordingly you make a schedule for your project. If you are not doing good due to other factors such as dependencies, people, availability, efforts, complexity, then you, instead of changing the dates, basically change the scope of your project. You start with dropping the could have or should have, but you must deliver the must haves. Anything that impacts the must have should be communicated to the visionary, and the visionary makes a decision. But within a time box, if should have or could have needs to be descoped or dropped, the ambassador or the solution development team should be empowered to make such decisions without having to come to visionary. So at the outset itself, the visionary should be able to tell. Now, there are a couple of rules, because generally when you ask a visionary or the users about their priorities, it is possible that they can ask for everything. Yeah, and when you ask them what is more important, they may say everything is important. If they say everything is important, then we are back to square A, because then it becomes even more challenging. Time cannot change, cost cannot change, and now the scope also cannot change, which means we just can't finish one of those things or everything. We need to have some rules. The rules are, you have not more than 60% kind of efforts, or you shouldn't have 60 more than 60% must haves. The should have could have can make the remaining 40%. So you have a contingency in the form of your should have and could have. Generally, in waterfall projects, if you use Prince2 or PMP, what happens is you have some time tolerances. So you give me a date, for example, 1st Jan, and we might agree some contingency or tolerance like plus minus 2 weeks. So as long as your delivery falls within the 2 weeks range, it is acceptable. But we can't change the date in at all. So what we do is we give some different type of contingency, which is about features and requirements. About 40% features are used as a contingency to respond to delays in development or any ad hoc changes or about problems on your not finishing all the work. So you can drop them and use them as a contingency, but at all times, minimum usable subset must be delivered. Now, what makes the minimum usable subset? Generally, you can think about legal requirements or the requirements that might make the product unusable, or you might not be able to sell the product without it. Like in my website, unless I show the product features or the search, people won't be able to see what I'm selling. But it is okay not to deliver, maybe for example, payment solution in the first release. Although I can ask you, give me search, give me each product details, and enable me to order the product online. And I can say the first two are must have and important for me, but I can leave without the payment functionality. So what happens is, if you are not able to deliver functionality, I still go live and I put my email and phone number. So if anybody wants to order product, they can actually just get in touch with my staff. So it doesn't stop me from going live, and that's why I can call it a should have or a could have. But what stops me from going live is the search itself, and that it can be run within 1 second and it shows all the products that I am offering. That is basically you consider when you think about must. It is possible sometimes that you might identify everything as must, like payments or like search. Even within search, is everything must? So search itself can become very big functionality. So I can say, well, okay, let's break down search. Let's say user can search product using drop down list, or they can enter free text, or they can select from some kind of a menu. And then I can say show them about uh, 20 records on each page. Show them, they can select the next 20, next 20, next 20. For each product, show some information. They should be able to kind of order in the price range, like show me low price, show me high price, or from high price towards low price, and so on. You can have all such functionalities. When you start breaking it down, that search functionality, you might find out the search has been now decomposed into smaller requirements. Now you ask the user, well, okay, the search actually is made up of 10 sub requirements. Let's prioritize. What if I don't give you ascending, descending kind of sorting in the first release? Will you be able to live without it? When you break down search, people can tell you what is very important for this particular functionality. So when everything turns out to be must, it's a good idea to break down that into smaller components and then compare them with each other. There are many other ways for identifying people on that prioritization. For example, apart from must have, should have, people do voting, people do net present value and feedback, sorry, payback periods. They also do business value. They also do, for example, legal versus illegal, and so on. So they use various factors according to their product, environment, and industry to decide what is very important. Who decides the must haves? It's the visionary and the business visionary who decides the must have. Actually, the business visionary owns the requirements list, and within the requirement list, the prioritization is done consulting the business visionary. But once the prioritization is decided for a release, and when you start time boxes on that, the visionary delegates some of the authorities to the ambassador, the person who represents the visionary, and the ambassador's job is to advise the team on should have and could have. But if must haves cannot be delivered on a particular release or within a particular time box, then visionary needs to be involved to explain him, you're not able to finish this particular functionality. What do we do? I mean, does this matter, and do you want to trade off between must haves and so on? Apart from that, if you receive any change request, once again you have to do the reprioritization. Now, as I mentioned to you, it is possible, and it is in the real life, business priorities keep changing. So what is essential, required right now may not be the situation a month later. Your priorities may change. So the way Agile works is, Take project, divide it into releases. Take release, divide it into time boxes. When each time box is finished, you think or you review what has been completed, what is not been completed. If the team consistently is not able to finish must haves in each time box, that means something is obviously wrong. Either the size of requirements are very big, or the requirements are changing, or the requirements are not properly understood, or the estimates are wrong, or the initial expectations on delivery schedule is wrong. So we need to do something about it. We might have to force reprioritization. That means there are the must have should be looked at again. Apart from that, if you are not able to complete must haves for the first few time boxes, you know that you might not finish well within time. But time cannot change, so you can force reprioritization, find out some should haves from the given must haves, and then again start the schedule. If you receive any change request, once again you have the same option, forcing reprioritization, so that we understand what's more important right now. Apart from that, it also allows the business to kind of provide any change request based on the changing market dynamics. Like at next tag, we have had this like we have a release schedule for a month. We start each week, deliver every 2 weeks something to the business. But what happens is, if we even if we have decided what we are going to do in the next release, based on competition, based on market conditions, offers going around in the market, or customer request, they keep changing the requirement. So when a new requirement comes, we just force the reprioritization, and then kind of deliver according to the now needs of the customer. Sponsors perspective is about the must haves, and they expect most all the must haves and most of the should have. But like I said, the 40% cushion is used for delivering on time, which is 40% contingency on should have and could have. Some of the top tips on prioritization: we should agree early in the project what's very important, and we use the priorities. If there are too many must haves, we should challenge the business to have a good second look at their priorities and must haves. And then, if we still see too many must haves, we break down the requirements, like in the case of a report. So, what kind of report is required? What is the content? How it will be made available? Break it down and find sub requirements, and then prioritize based on sub requirement. So I deliver your report, but in the first release I deliver these type of reports, and in the next release I deliver you the remaining ones. So you might have to basically break down the must haves if it is very difficult to prioritize. Rule: can't have more than 60% must haves. Should have and could have together make 40%, so that you can fall back by de-scoping them. We use prioritization in time boxing. So how the time boxing works then? As I said, take a project, divide it into increments, also called as releases. For each increment or a release, divide them into time boxes. So when we are in foundations phase, we figure out what requirements we have, and we figure out overall timelines, like 4 months, 6 months, 8 months. Because we know work expands, because we know there are many assumptions about people, efforts, availability, and complexity, it is only possible that the work will expand and the timeline will expand. To mitigate these general risks on project, we kind of freeze or anchor the date. So we say the project will be delivered in next 6 months. To make sure we have early deliveries, we divide the project into increments. To make sure we arrive on time for each increment, we divide it into more manageable time boxes, like 2 weeks time box. Now, how do you plan the time box and how do you deliver the time box? So, first increment, 4 time boxes. We are now into the first time box. Generally, as part of delivery plan, you schedule time boxes and you have requirements. As part of time box, what we do is we look at what are the requirements and their priorities, and we look at the time box. Day one, first half, we check which people are available in the team. what are their availability, like if anyone is taking leave, anyone working on some other project operations and so on. So we figure out the total efforts available with us. So if I have got 7 people on the team, in 2 weeks I will have around 280 hours, excluding the weekends and so on. If there is any bank holiday, I deduct those hours as well. I will check with them their availability during the 2 weeks. So I have, say for example, 240 hours with me because few people are on leave and there is a bank holiday. Now I have 240 hours and I see what's there on the agenda. Now I find out the priorities and I also check technical dependencies, ordering, and sequence of work. I take the work that can be scheduled for the first time box. So I pick up the user stories. Like in this time box, we are going to work on running search results for the users. So users will do input, we will process it, and we will show the results. We take this story, and in the first half, we run something like a facilitated workshop, get the business stakeholders to work with us, take each story that makes up that time box, understand with the business stakeholders their perspective, their point of view. So they tell, they explain, you ask questions, you ask queries, and you understand the requirement. So what we have just managed to do is we have done just in time analysis of the requirement instead of doing it during foundations. Now take the requirement and make a prototype or make a quick design, something that can be quickly shown to the customer. So 2 days or 3 days later, we again go back to the customer. We show based on their requirements what we have got. They might suggest some improvements, refinements, corrections, or after seeing the prototype, while you have done it the way they want, they might think, well, I think you have done it the way I want, but I think I gave you wrong requirements. I want some more changes. So they give you some more changes and you make those. You then go back to them. And then when they say, yes, this is how I want it, you go back and the team starts doing their work. Like somebody writes test plans, somebody writes code, somebody does reviews, somebody ensures design documentation is completed, somebody makes sure requirements and designs are meeting together. And when you have everything ready, you again show back the demo to the customer of a working feature. The customer will test from their point of view, will review, and you finish the documentation. Then, on the last day of the time box, you all come together to see how we have delivered the time box, the retrospection part. What was the expectation? What was the target? How will we achieve the target and expectation? What went wrong? What went well? And how do we plan the next time box? How do we execute the next time box? So you carry out the learning, you inspect, adapt, and improve. If you are not able to finish all the work, you check, but did we deliver the must have? If you didn't deliver the must haves as well, then we have a serious problem, because then something has gone wrong. We need to investigate further to understand what actually has gone wrong, so that in the next time box we can actually do something about it. But consecutive time boxes, you are not able to complete all the target work, then there is serious problem, and we know we have to reset the expectations. So time box are the smallest units. Now what, who is involved in time box? It is actually the solution development team. They are involved, and the solution development team involves representative from business, like the business analyst, the business ambassador, the business advisors. You have the developers, you have the testers, and you have the team lead, who is responsible to motivate, lead, and help the team achieve the time box objectives. What deliverables do we have? We create time box plan in the beginning, and each day we do daily stand-ups to see how we are tracking, progressing for that time box plan. And at the end of time box, we again check to see how well we delivered. So you have the time box review record. When team do the work, they actually create code, test cases, test results, and so on. So the things that we discussed, like solutions assurance pack, solution, the developed solution, or we talked about time box plan, time box review record, they all come out as part of time box. And when do we run the time box? As part of exploration plus engineering, or exploration only, or engineering only. So each of these phases, whether they are combined or they are run in a standalone, you use time boxes to deliver them. So if my exploration phase is 1 month, I might have 4 time boxes of 1 week each. When all exploration is complete, I run engineering phase of 4 months, for example, and I might have time boxes of 1 week each for the engineering phase and so on. You can even run time boxes for planning, for deployment, and so on. So time box plays a very crucial role in Agile. One of the most important thing that helps us basically come on time. In Scrum world, they call it sprint. So if you have heard the word sprint and the word time box, is the same thing. Time box is used in the Agile world, whereas Scrum is very much specific to software developers. You divide time boxes. You can think about how the time box is designed. First day, first half is kickoff, where you meet the business, the management, and the solution development come together. They look at the objectives and set expectations. Then you have investigation, where you do analysis, the requirements gathering and understanding. And the prototyping refinement is where you make designs and you do the development and do the again go back and feedback loop. And consolidation is actually where you do documentation, reviews, testing, demos, and so on. As part of closeout, we again get the approvals from the stakeholders. We do retrospection, the lessons learned. Time box plans are prepared by the teams. By each team member owns up their activities, and you use Moscow within each time box. So if you are not running to plan, you can adjust your Moscows like should have, could have. You have daily stand-ups to support continuous communication between teams, and business ambassador is always there to ensure the right product is being developed. The recommended timelines for time boxes are 2 to 4 weeks, and in some cases up to 6 weeks. Ideally, 4 weeks for long projects, but where you have incremental deliveries, quick releases, a lot of companies use 2 weeks. Yeah, but you need to find out, are we really able to achieve something in 2 weeks? These partitions like investigation, refinement, and consolidation, these are actually iterations that we have talked earlier. The iterative development. You remember that identify, plan, evolve, and basically identify, plan, evolve, and review. So investigation is what work needs to be done. Refinement is doing it according to the priorities, and consolidation is about finishing it off, getting the output which is fit for purpose. Some guidelines on how you distribute the efforts: 10 to 20% on the initial analysis, refinement on the design and development, and 10 to 20% again to testing, documentation, and review. So if my time box is about 20 days, that is 4 weeks, about 10% goes on analysis. So let's say uh, 10% of 20 days is about 2 to 3 days I spend on analysis. About 60 to 80% on designing and development. So maybe, for example, 8 days is what 80% is what of 20. That is about 16 days, and then remaining days on the consolidation. That is any rework or testing, reviews, and kind of closing the review comments. So you have three iterations: investigation, refinement, consolidation. And what we are doing here is we are doing a little bit of analysis, design, development, testing, review, documentation, so that in the in the span between kickoff to close out, we do something and show back to the customer to get the feedback and go to the next step of development. This helps us in getting buy-in and for the user to keep checking the progress and what we are doing. Each of the time box iteration, that is investigate, refine, consolidate, so three iteration, are actually the identify, plan, evolve, and review step. So you actually have something like this: project divided into increment, increment divided into time box divided into kickoff, investigation, refinement, consolidation, closeout. As when you do investigation, you identify what you want to investigate, you plan how and
Sorry, can you start again? Can you,
yeah, this one, this
Ashish? Sorry,
particular slide.
can you, yeah, how that iteration,
Yeah.
identify, plan, evolve, and review
Yep.
is linked with this iterations,
Exactly.
investigation, refinement, and consolidation.
Yes, yeah. So you have a project which is divided into increments. You can call them releases. So a 6 months project is divided into three increments of 2 months each. What it means, every 2 months we will deliver something to the live system so that customer can make use of it and we get early benefits. Now to arrive on time for the first increment, what we do is we divide increment into time boxes. So 2 months is equal to 8 weeks. After 8 weeks, I'm going to deliver something to production. What I do is these 8 weeks I divide into four time boxes. 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and then we go live. Now let's take each time box. How do you deliver those 2 weeks? That is 10 days. First day, we do a kickoff where we say we are starting the time box. Let's just look at the team bandwidth, availability, and the work that needs to be done. So you agree the objectives and exit criteria of time box. Then what you do? You begin the iterations. Each time box, that is the 2 weeks schedule of a time box, is divided into three iterations so that at the end of each iteration we go back to the customer with the work we have done, show them, agree what needs to be done next, go back, do those changes, come back to the customer again, get the next steps, complete it, go back to the customer again. How this helps? We keep constant touch with the customer, we get constant feedbacks, we get improvements, customer gets an opportunity to see product evolving, suggest changes, improvements, refinements. What it means is customer gets what they want and we know what customer want, so we meet their expectations. So time box is actually divided into kickoff, investigation, refinement, consolidation, and closeout. If your time box is 10 days, first day, first half, we do kickoff. Then we start investigation. Usually, you spend 10 to 20% efforts in investigation. Investigation is about understanding requirements and quality expectations. Refinement is about doing design and development. And consolidation has about again 10 to 20% efforts. It's about completing documents, checking, testing, reviews, and tidying up. And closeout is the last day, the 10th day, maybe the second half of 10th day, when we bring all the team together, run what we have got, show them walkthroughs, demos, and lessons learned so that we know how we performed in this time box, what we achieved from the objectives that we agreed during kickoff, what we did not achieve, what's the kind of backlog, and how do we address it. Now, when you run each of the iteration, whether it is investigation, refinement, or consolidation, there is a guidance which is how do you run the investigation. So step one for investigation is identify, well, okay, what we need to investigate, so you understand, well, okay, which requirements we are going to explore. Then you plan, well, which people will be involved in telling the requirements, which people will collect, and what we are going to discuss, and when. And then in the third step, that is evolve, is you actually collect requirements, you make your prototypes, you make your documents, agree with the customer, and then go back to the customer again to review. What has happened is at the end of day 2 or 3, we have shown customer what I have understood from your business needs. What are your requirements? And then they say, well, okay, yes, that's what it is. Or they may say there are some changes. So we agree. what is the action for next iteration. So we again identify what are we going to do as part of refinement iteration. Now refinement iteration is about 60 to 80%. So for a 10 days time box, about 6 days will go in refinement. So first step, identify what are we going to do in the next 6 days, what things we have to look at, what we are going to focus at. Plan who is doing what, dependencies, and then third step, which is evolve. Do it. Keep meeting everyday basis. What's been done? Is anything stopping us from doing my things? When we are done, again meet the stakeholders. That is review. Show them what we have done since last review, which is maybe couple of days earlier. So they come, they check, they tell, and then we plan the next iteration, which is consolidation. Again, identify what happens here, how doing it, and again getting it checked by the stakeholders. Now, usually, end of iteration reviews are attended by solution development team with the help of the ambassador. They understand what's been done and the feedback. But sometimes it is possible if the functionality is complex, very important, or there are risks, or only visionary knows about it, or in the beginning, when the teams are new, it is possible that the visionary, the project manager, the technical coordinator may attend review meetings at the end of each iteration to make sure teams understand their perspective and vision, and we are going in the right direction. But it is possible if your project has about 10 to 20 time boxes, after some time boxes, when the hand holding has been completed, when you get confidence that people are able to understand the vision and they can go and do about it, make some decisions and take ownership, then these people can move out, and what they can do is they can come at kickoff and they can come at closeout. So they might not come at the end of each iteration. They may leave it to the solution development to make their own decisions and kind of move forward. So that's how the time box iterations work. Three iterations: investigation, refinement, and consolidation. If you have four time boxes, you will use each iteration within the each time box. Yeah. Why so many kind of review times? Because we want to collaborate with business. We are doing it for business. Instead of going back to them after a long interval, we need to have short spells of feedback so that we know what we are doing is the right thing to do. Yeah, we get their feedback and they also approve. Yeah.
Right.
So here is that diagram once again. Big picture: project divided into increments, increments divided into time boxes, and as you see, each time box has a kickoff, investigation, refinement, consolidation, and closeout. Again, start, kickoff, consolidate, refine, investigate, refine, consolidate, closeout. So every time box goes through that same kind of a iteration. We have reviews at the end of each iteration. We have demos and retrospection at the end of each time box. One thing that we must make sure is all time boxes should be of equal lengths. Yeah. Okay. uh, anything would you want to ask so far?